Hello all. In this video, let's review chapter 2, that is addressing population, from the ICSE environmental science syllabus. Now, as you all know, population is the total number of organisms of a particular species, and in this case we are talking about the human population. So we'll be first looking at the link between the growing human population and the degradation of the environment. Followed by this, we'll be looking at a few demographic transition models and the strategies for controlling this growth of population. We'll also be looking at the developmental framework for alleviation of poverty. Now, when we say human population is causing environmental degradation, or when we say there is a link between these two, it is true because human population has increased exponentially over the last few decades. We have had a population explosion. And what are the reasons for this population to explode? The first reason is the increase in birth rate. Secondly, there is decrease in mortality, or the death rate has sharply come down. There has been increase in the life expectancy of individuals. Apart from this, we have had very good improvement in medical technology and in food production and distribution. All of these reasons have led to the human population in exploding or growing exponentially beyond the capacity of the earth or capacity of the ecosystem. Now, this has caused several effects. The first effect that it has caused is the change in land use pattern. What does that mean? It means that when there are more number of individuals, we need to allocate the land for those individuals to live, for those individuals to go for work, for those individuals to get food. So there has been a shift from forest ecosystem to more of urban ecosystems, or people living in the rural areas. All of this has this land use pattern has shifted from the natural forest ecosystems to urban or settlements where people are living or where they are working. So that is the biggest change that has happened, and that is a big problem when we look at the global scenario. We have also had resource depletion. It's not just the land resource which is being depleted. Many other resources also have reduced, like food. The shelter problems are there. Healthcare is a big trouble. Electricity is a big problem in several cities and rural areas. Many of the forests have been converted into croplands. So resources are coming down quickly. That is resource depletion. There has been increase in waste generation. This we have seen in a different chapter as well. Waste is one of the biggest problems of society. So as the population increases, so does the generation of waste. And lastly, due to the resource depletion, due to the change in the land use pattern, we have had severe loss of biodiversity. So these are some of the negative effects of the population on the environment. Now, the UN's population projections for 2050 is that the population on Earth will reach 9.8 billion. Currently, that is as of November 15, 2022, we reached 8 billion mark. And by 2050, we will reach 9.8 billion. In fact, by 2037, in another 15 years' time, we will reach 9 billion. So, on the whole, if you see, the population growth has decreased. That is, the fertility rates have come down. Due to the fertility rates coming down, the world population is growing at a slower rate. But then that has also led to an aging population. So, the number of old people, that is, people who are 65 and above, will be more in the future. Not only that, this report also says, the UN's population projections also say that the life expectancy is higher worldwide. So the global life expectancy will reach 76 years by 2050, and between 2095 to 2100, the life expectancy will be 82 years. That is, an average person will live for 82 years by that time. So the life expectancy will go higher and higher. It's already increasing and it will further go higher. It also predicts that Africa is the fastest growing continent. So, developing countries, especially in Africa, are growing very rapidly, like Nigeria, Niger, Congo, Ethiopia, Uganda. One of the main reasons being their high fertility rates. That is why these countries in African continent are growing very fast. The population of 61 countries is expected to decrease by 2050, and this includes many of the European countries. This is mainly because the fertility is very low and it is much lesser than the replacement level is the level that is required to bring back the population to the original level. So because the number of children who are being born, the birth rate is much low. That is one of the reasons why the population is shrinking in many countries, especially in the European continent. We also have China and India, which are the most populous countries, and it says that India will soon be more in population than China. So China and India are already above 1 billion, but the scenario that is predicted is that India will surpass China in population numbers. There are many large developing countries where the average number of children per woman has decreased rapidly. So that is happening. We are having lesser number of children being born per woman. This is mainly seen in South Africa, in Iran, in China, in Brazil, even in India. But on the whole, if you see, India is having more than 1 billion population, and it is only going to increase more if certain strategies are not employed, or if certain strategies are not put in place. So now all of this has led to the climate change. Now the increasing population, or the population growth, not only has it affected the environment, but it has also caused change in the climate pattern, because there is more need for food, there is more fuel requirement, there is more need for shelter. So that has led to deforestation. Deforestation is where the forests are cut down for converting into a settlement or into an agricultural land or a crop land. So forests regulate the temperature. We know that forests are regulating the rainfall on earth, and because of the rampant deforestation, that has also led to global warming. So global warming, due to the increased greenhouse gases, because more fuel is being burnt, that has led to more global warming. It has led to the industrial pollution. So we can say that population growth has, directly, it is having a direct link with the industrial pollution, because there's more demand for the consumer products. So if you see over here, increasing population does have a very negative and a direct effect, not only on the environment but also on the climate. So there are certain alternatives that we can have. We can choose an alternative future if we are able to achieve the low projections that have been given by UN. So UN has projected in three different variants. They have given a low projection of the population, a medium projection, and a high projection. If we are able to achieve the low projection of the population that has been given by UN, then we will be, having an alternate future. We will be able to control a lot of the negative effects. We'll be able to reduce the degradation of the environment. We'll be able to reduce the amount of climate change, provided we put in place all those strategies. So the alternative futures can be, or is possible, by sustainable development, by use of the alternate fuels, or by implementing the strategies for population control, which we'll be seeing in the next few slides. Now when we see the developing countries and the developed countries, there is a continuous divide on environmental issues, on development. All of these are, there's a big demarcation between the developed countries and the developing countries. Developed countries have more consumption. So every 1,000 individuals is in a developed country are consuming 3 to 4% of the earth's resources, in comparison to 9,000 individuals of the developing countries. So because developed countries have more purchasing power, they have more consumption. Their demand for forest products is much more. Their forest fuel resource consumption is more. So they do have more consumption because of their higher purchasing power. That is one side of the developed countries. The developing countries are definitely having much more population growth in comparison to the developed countries. And when there is more population growth, automatically there is more pressure on all the sectors to increase their output. So there's more demand for resources, there is higher pollution, there is more food requirement, which again leads to land exploitation. So these are the different sides of the developed countries and the developing countries. And due to this difference, due to this divide, there has always been a debate on who should be taking more care, who should be putting in more strategies. Is it the developed countries or the developing countries? Both have each other to blame. So we need to see, or we need to make sure that throughout the world we have to employ strategies to control the population growth, so that the environment is not degraded any further. And that has to be done by both the developed and the developing countries. The blame game will not work. Now, if we see the demography as such is the statistical study of human population with reference to the size, the density of population, the distribution of population. That study is what we call as demography. And when we say demographic transition, it is the shift from the high birth rate which is seen in societies which have minimal technology or very less education, or economic development is very very poor, from such societies, from such geographical areas, when there is a shift to a lesser birth rate, lesser, lower birth rate or lower death rate, when that shift happens, that shift is what we call as the demographic transition. And this shift mainly happens through increased industrialization. So these are what you see over here are the different stages of demographic transition. Traditionally there were four stages, but now a fifth stage has also been included. Now the first stage, what you see over here, is where there is very high birth rate and very high death rate. This is mainly happening, this was seen in our world until the late 18th century, because the medical advancements were not so freely available to everyone. We didn't have so many medical technologies, so the birth rate also was high, the death rate also was very high. Due to this, the population growth is very slow. That is why you can see over here the maroon colored line shows the growth of the population, because there is a lot of death also happening. Even though the birth rate is very high, many children are being born, death rate also was high, due to which the population growth is very very slow. The next stage is where we have the death rate decreasing, but the birth rate is still high. So this mainly happens when you have healthcare coming in, there's more of education, food supply is better, many people get food, so they don't die due to famines. This is where the death rate decreases, but the birth rate is still high. So in this stage you have population growth increasing, there's a faster population growth. Stage 3 also, there is a faster population growth is still increasing. It's slowly, towards the end it starts slowing down, but there is increase in the population, because the birth rate is now falling. Though the death rate is low, the birth rate is also falling. This is mainly due to use of contraception, or due to increased education, increased awareness, urbanization, women are getting educated, there are a lot of social changes that are happening. Due to this, the birth rate is now falling. And fourth stage is where both are low, so the birth rate is also low, the death rate is also low. This usually leads to a stable population. So you can see over here the population starts to stabilize. The death rate may slightly increase after this due to lifestyle diseases, or due to lack of exercise and aging population, but generally the population now becomes stabilized in the stage 4. So in developed countries, they have already reached stage 4, and in the 20th century they reached stage 4, where the population is stabilized, so the birth rate is also low, the death rate is also low. Let's have a look at some of the demographic transitions in some of the countries. So you can see over here, this is the demographic transition of Germany and Sweden. As you can see, the population is increasing. This orange colored line is showing the increase in population is increasing, but the birth and death rates are pretty low, as you can see over here. You can see this in Mauritius. On the other hand, though the birth rate is still a little high, death rate is quite low. It is due to the medical advancements. And you can see China over here. Again, birth rate is a bit high, though the death rate has considerably decreased, but the population keeps increasing. As you can see in this graph, so this is the demographic transition of India. And what you see here is the a beautiful image that is showing the population structure of South Korea. Now, Korea, for the first time in 2020, their population had declined, and this is mainly because the fertility is very low. The their fertility rate is the lowest in the world. They have only 0.84 births per woman. What does that mean? It means that the birth rate is very 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 less, and that is why the population was declining, or it was, for the first time it had declined in the year 2020. And as you can see over here, this is the prediction for the population in South Korea for the next few years as well, for the next few decades as well. So this is what the demographic transition means, that is the shift from very high birth and death rates to very low birth and death rates due to several social changes and industrialization. Now, what are the different strategies that we can employ to control the population? So, like I told you earlier, if we do not control the population, we are going to have many more changes in the climate. We are going to have a lot of, a lot more degradation of the environment than what is there already. So, the strategies for controlling the population growth mainly in it is that the family planning, or the reduction in the number of children, or the birth rate reduction, that has to become a people's movement. People have to be made aware. They need to be they need to feel that yes, it should be lesser. It can't be always dictated by a government. It has to become the people's movement. It has to become people's choice to plan their family or to have smaller families. There has to be awareness on the benefits of small family. So the people should be made aware about how the population, is causing a lot of climate change and environmental degradation, and what are the benefits if you have a smaller family. And that is the reason the uh, awareness on population is included in right from the school curriculum. So school and college curriculum does have the awareness on smaller family and what are their benefits. Education for women, this is very very important. So women centered human development is extremely important. The women should be, their education should be improved, their knowledge should be increased on the health choices that they have. They should be made more aware about their reproductive health. Empowering of women will make sure that, their decision making is increasing. They are able to take decisions in their families, in their societies, and it will reduce a lot of gender based violence or gender based discrimination, domestic violence, that can be achieved if we go for more education of women. Government incentives need to be in place. This is already there in many of the countries where government will provide facilities for employees, with two children. And so if they have more than two children, the facilities come down, due to which these incentives will motivate people to go for smaller families. Contraceptives which are to be used for the birth control, they are also distributed freely amongst, areas which have high population. So such kind of incentives need to be taken up by the government immediately in areas where there is increasing population growth. And finally, reducing the infant mortality. This is because parents, should not have larger families or larger family size. They shouldn't increase the family size just so that at least a few survive. So in many countries what happens is that the healthcare system is so poor, the sanitation facilities are so such a bad condition that parents usually have many children so that at least a few survive till adulthood. That shouldn't happen. If you reduce the infant mortality, if you ensure that the, healthcare and sanitation is in good condition, then parents will have smaller families and all the children will progress to adulthood. So these are some of the strategies for controlling the population growth. Now, when we look at poverty alleviation, this is also part of population growth, because when we have too many people living in a particular area or in a particular country, automatically their economic status comes down. Many of them tend to be from the poorer sections, and that again leads to a lot of different types of problems. So, we need to make sure that there are different strategies, different frameworks that are provided to reduce poverty or to alleviate proper poverty. The first one is social mobilization. Social mobilization is basically motivating the communities for participating actively towards their own development. This has been seen in many places. For example, there is a gram panchayat in Kerala where there has been, they didn't have enough sanitation facilities. So a series of awareness programs and meetings were conducted regarding basic sanitation facilities. And each family, it was decided that each family would put in 20% of the work, whereas the village panchayat would do the rest 80%. But it so happened that within 3 months, all the work was completed. And in fact, the panchayat was able to save a lot of money because the families took it upon themselves to build the toilets and to build the sanitation facilities. So, mobilizing the people, making sure that there is participation at the local level, empowering them, or strengthening the human and the institutional resources at the local level is very very important. This helps in participation of the rural poor also. They are able to take decisions regarding themselves. It increases their access to social services, to production services, and it also helps in making efficient use of the local financial resources. So participation by the people for themselves is very very important. That is called a social mobilization, and this is very powerful in decentralization of power as well. The second method, or the second strategy, is by agricultural development. When the agricultural productivity increases, automatically income will increase, and when the income will increase for the poor farmers, it will ensure that they don't go hungry. It will avert any kind of food shortage because food prices will be less, so that will benefit the poor households as well. So having technology improvement in the agricultural sector is very 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 crucial, because that ensures that there is surplus food for everybody and nobody has to go hungry. Improving the small scale industries. So economic development is very important. When you have small scale industries in every area, in every village, in every small panchayat region, that ensures that there is economic development, there is employment for all the people there, and it also helps in utilizing the raw materials which are available in that area. So development and setting up of small scale industries is very important or very crucial to removing poverty. And finally, human development. Human development is enhancing the education, improving the health status of people, helping people to develop skills, gaining skills. This is something that has been done in Hong Kong, in Japan, because they are poor in natural resources, but they have made sure that all their, you know, people, all the human resource that they have is extremely skilled. So that is again building skillful labor is also something that is very important, or that comes under the human development. So these are some of the frameworks, some of the strategies that can be employed to alleviate poverty. I hope this video was useful to all of you. See you all in the other videos. Thank you.